Chapter 14, Listen to the Truth. It was with some apprehension that Caleb met with Grace and Asher on Sunday afternoon at Asher's place. The topic of the earthquake was all they could talk about. For now, only they knew. As they met, they were aware that Blaze was planting the information pointing to the event. Caleb was having some difficulty balancing the day-to-day issues in his life with the huge region-wide and earth-wide issues that Blaze was having them face. With all the catastrophes and natural disasters occurring globally, Caleb wondered just how much of an effect information coming from the future was having on events. It seemed obvious that, despite Blaze's words about not altering the future, there were some pretty extensive adjustments being made. They were somewhat relieved to find the information about the anticipated earthquake on the news first thing on Monday. It was laid out just as Blaze had said. There was the percentage chance, the magnitude and the location, along with the projected time of Thursday between 1:30 and 2:30 p.m. Rather than being just a dump of fake information, Caleb, Grace and Asher were amazed to see that it was a completely integrated and coordinated discovery that was made by numerous scientists. This was way bigger than Blaze had let on. Apparently, all the necessary information was already in the existing data. All it took were a few well-placed summary reports bringing the observations into focus and identifying the significance. Scientists around the world verified the accuracy by noting the indicators that were present prior to dozens of major quakes in the past. Applying the same analysis to the indicators on the West Coast led to the precise prediction. There was now a way of identifying the timing of all earthquakes with amazing accuracy. Starting immediately, lives were being saved worldwide. The news was full of catastrophes being avoided in numerous locations and irrefutable conclusions regarding the upcoming local quake. Monday at school was interesting to say the least. Before they even got to the classroom, they met Mr. Badgel in the hall. "Your cousin sure seems to know about everything before it happens. Does telepathy run in your family, Caleb?" Mr. Badgel began. He was in such a rush to help us get all our earthquake prep up to date. And now there is a complete quake predictor system announced, and what they say is irrefutable evidence of an earthquake here on Thursday. And the bit about the Grizzlies. I shouldn't tell you about what I learned this weekend, but the Grizzlies are indeed headed back to Vancouver. What a fluke. Accidentally, unknowingly, or whatever, Blaze guessed correctly about what was going on. There are some people who want to talk to him about his comments. If it wasn't such a crazy notion, the only other solution I can think of is that Blaze is from the future. After that comment, he had the undivided attention of his three worried-looking listeners. I was at a get-together with my friends in the basketball world and happened to mention Blaze's joke about the Grizzlies coming back to Vancouver. My voice had been just loud enough to be heard throughout the room. Gradually the whole room had fallen absolutely silent. The comment obviously struck a chord with some. They went quiet with looks of shock on their faces. The rest immediately took notice. All conversation ceased and was replaced with questioning looks from everyone who wasn't already shocked into silence. I was immediately ushered out of the room by my friend, who is a local team manager, along with his associate, who is the CEO of a large organization in Vancouver. We moved into a private office and the door was closed. I was directed to a chair. The conversation between the two was heated and I was having trouble keeping up. It seems my friend was being accused of leaking confidential information. Of course, he was vehemently denying it. The CEO was going on about some deal costing upwards of $280 million. And that if the information got out, and there were competing bids from others, they could easily be into it for another $50 million. Money they weren't sure they could secure. He said they may end up losing the chance of getting the Grizzlies back into our Vancouver area. I realized how serious the situation was and tried to explain as best I could. At first, they were skeptical of the story of this Blaze, but they finally seemed to accept that it had been a joke in the classroom. They still want to talk to Blaze though, so I gave them the particulars of his scientists in the school's UBC program and they'll be getting in touch with him today, through UBC. As they listened, Caleb, Grace and Asher were slowly growing paler. Eyes wide and mouths open, You could see beads of sweat forming on their foreheads. Mr. Badgel couldn't help but notice the response. So, don't worry, the CEO will talk to Blaze, and everything will be fine, Mr. Badgel concluded. Now, what I've told you is a private conversation, and the deal is confidential. I probably shouldn't have told you, but I trust you to keep it to yourselves. They all nodded right away. You could have mentioned that Blaze could be reached through me and not UBC, Caleb said. Well, we do have confidentiality arrangements. There would be no way I could pass your name along. No, we need to keep this a formal contact through UBC, Mr. Badgel stated. Right, okay, I understand, Caleb said, while Grace and Asher stole worried looks back and forth. After chatting with Mr. Badgel, the three students turned to walk towards their classroom. Just at that moment, Ms. Lim, the school principal, rounded the corner and nodded to the three of them. Great sense of timing your cousin has, Caleb. Because of him, we're fully prepared for the coming earthquake. If the ability to predict the future runs in the family, I need to put some time aside each week to check with you about upcoming events. She laughed as she wished them a good day and continued on to the office. They headed into the classroom in a bit of a daze. There were a few minutes before class was to start, but they weren't sure what they should do. This is starting to get out of hand. There are too many questions being asked. We need to get a message to Blaze, Grace whispered. Well, that's not going to happen. He's in the future and we don't know when he'll be back, Asher added quietly. Wait, I know what we can do. Caleb suddenly brightened up. Blaze left me an emergency contact number that he said I could text if I ever needed to contact him when he's in the future. It's taped to my laptop. It's an early dismissal at school today. Let's head over to your place as soon as school ends, Grace offered. Message to the future? That's cool, Caleb. I've got to see this. Asher responded. Let's go now. We better not, said Caleb. Let's not raise any more suspicion with Mr. Badgel. He just talked to us in the hall. We'd be in big trouble if we suddenly disappeared. With that thought, they sat down in their seats and gave their best efforts to concentrate as the current events discussions began. In class, Mr. Badgel was keen to review all the media reports about the earthquake from that morning. As he said, it was a big deal, one that would save countless lives around the world. It was the first time any such warning had been issued that far in advance. He did point out that there were those that didn't believe the reports but indicated how the information had been verified through multiple reliable sources and that this new knowledge could be trusted. Mr. Badgel emphasized with the students how they should always be looking to verify new information that comes their way. He cautioned them to not be too quick to believe a single report, especially on the internet. He spoke about checking with reliable sources that were as unbiased as possible. Schools throughout the region were right now scrambling to prepare for the quake. That was something that Joseph Stammen Elementary had done the week before. We have Blaze to thank for that, Mr. Badgel had concluded, glancing over to Caleb, who was slowly turning red in the face as students throughout the room turned to look at him. They all had trouble concentrating that morning. Caleb did the best, as he had become an expert at making notes and then clearing his mind to focus on what he had to do. Once he had jotted down details of their plan in his little pocket notebook, he was able to focus completely on what was going on in class. Grace and Asher, on the other hand, were completely preoccupied and not engaging at all with what was going on. Over the course of the morning, it didn't get much better. Caleb winced as Mr. Badgel asked Asher a question at one point and Asher didn't answer. When Asher had finally refocused, with the help of a pen poked in his back, it was to hear that Mr. Badgel wanted to talk to him after class. The day was going from bad to worse. After class, Mr. Badgel asked Asher to join him at his desk. Seeing Caleb and Grace waiting, their teacher motioned them to join in as well. Actually, all three of you seem to be somewhere else with your thoughts. Does this inattention have to do with all the news around Blaze? He asked. Eyes cast down, they all shrugged their shoulders in unison. You know you can talk to me about any problems you may be having. I won't keep you now, but we will need to follow this up more if you aren't able to focus on your lessons in class. I really count on the three of you when it comes to class discussions. Caleb, you contributed today, so that was good. I've really noticed you doing so much better in class. It must be that clever quick program you've been studying. Well done. After apologies and hasty assurances that they would try harder, they were out the door and headed to Caleb's. Moments after arriving, they were huddled around Caleb's computer. They typed in their information for Blaze, directed it to the number he had left, and hit return. In a flash, it was sent off to a waiting message box. Caleb turned from the computer. Well, we'll see if that works. I wonder, Caleb began, before being interrupted by a loud ping from the computer. Looking back, he could see that a message had suddenly appeared. What is it? Asher asked. It's an invitation to a Zoom meeting, Grace noted, reading the details. And it's from Blaze. What's going on? This is crazy, Blaze can't be sending a Zoom meeting invitation. He's in the future, Caleb commented. Well, click it. Let's find out. Asher exclaimed eagerly, reaching forward and grabbing the mouse. In a moment, the usual message had popped up that indicated they were connected and waiting for the host to let them into the meeting. Blaze's face soon filled the screen. Are you guys there? He said. It says you're on, but I don't see you. Blaze's voice asked from the computer. The post-it note Caleb. You've got your computer camera covered. Grace observed. Good for you. You've been paying attention to the internet security concerns we learned about from Clever Quick. Oh, right, sorry, Caleb blurted out, reaching forward and pulling the paper off while simultaneously clicking on the audio button. There you are. Good to see you and hear you. Blaze announced. Wait, how is this possible? Asher asked. Aren't you still in the future? Yes, I am. And I'm beginning to think all things tech are possible with my friend Matteo. We have him to thank. They've made some pretty dramatic developments through his new company Blast to the past tech. Blaze began. When you send me a message, it instantly appears in my server with a notification that it's been in my inbox for 8 years. I have to make sure I've set my incoming message settings to never expire. That's incredible, Asher muttered. Caleb and Grace were just shaking their heads. The really tricky part is getting through to you on Zoom. It's a combination of me using some old tech we've set up in the lab here at the university, and special programs I installed on your computer. I hope you don't mind, Caleb. I remembered all your passwords, so it wasn't difficult. No, fine, obviously, Caleb whispered. So, I'm using a 2023 Apple computer loaded with 2023 programming to talk to you. It's a bit frustrating, using a computer with less than 100 terabytes of memory. Things are so slow. In any case, just a few more points and then I'll let you pass on the information. I already have an idea about your concerns, so no rush on that. The Zoom message from this side is channeled through our server, directly into the Fibonacci spiraling waves using a subband for data transmission. On your end, in your time, it spins wirelessly into an available server. Then a special command is sent out which detects the program I installed on your computer. The link looks great now, but it is not always stable for streaming, so it's often better to be done in chunks. The screen may appear frozen from time to time. Just be patient. The messaging will soon restart and get caught up. Well, not surprising, Blaze. After all, you are a few time zones away. Grace laughed. Very funny, Grace. Blaze replied. It was now his turn to shake his head. Now, on to your questions. Information was shared and solutions were plotted. Blaze said not to worry about Mr. Badgel and his comments. According to Blaze, there would soon be a visitor, and all would be cleared up. Apparently, Mr. Badgel had an important role to play in the future of Clever Quick and in encouraging the pursuit of truth. Blaze seemed to have all the angles covered, and that had reassured them. It seemed that he had more to share, so they sat and patiently waited for him to continue. Glad you reached out to me, he finally said. I did want to talk to you about the clever quick topic for this week. The Q for questioning sources is one of the most important of clever quick. Blaze began. The future actually does depend on everyone asking the right questions and listening to the truth, while ignoring the lies and falsehoods. Battling the forces of deception will be the main task for the people of Earth for some time to come. With the abundant use of social media and people sharing so many things that aren't true, it's become incredibly confusing. We've learned in the future to deal with this somewhat better, but it's still not easy. It's crazy to think that many folks who cry about fake news are ironically the same ones who are using their comments to steer people away from the facts. Politics and attempts to fool people by spreading conspiracy theories dominate the current events in your time. We all have a job to do, and that's sorting truth from all the disinformation. You need to be able to fully utilize all the information that comes your way. Verify truthfulness, double-check and cross-reference information, and don't just believe what is presented, especially on the internet. Realize that with the increased sophistication and use of artificial intelligence, known as AI, it will become more and more difficult to sort the real from the fake. The world is entering a period of reckoning through the coming years. In the future, the internet will be better controlled and lies will not be so easily distributed. The safeguards have not yet been set up in your time though, so you need to proceed with great care. Develop your curiosity and maintain skepticism. When confronting those that have made conclusions based on what look like untruths, learn to ask, why do you believe what you do? You're not going to be able to help everyone, but anyone with an open mind could be helped to realize they need to form their conclusions on information that is factual. As soon as you can, watch video A14. You'll recognize some of the points I've made here. That is, if you were listening. That brought a chuckle from them all. Blaze went on, only share with others what you are sure is true. That advice is good for relationships and friendships as well, Blaze went on, pausing a moment and looking directly at each of them in turn. Don't immediately believe things you hear about people. Always seek the truth. Also, don't share things that you hear that may hurt someone, even if there is the possibility that some of it might be true. Before you share anything with others, ask yourself if the words are true, necessary and kind. Seek to raise people up and support others, not drag them down. They all sat quietly, reflecting on Blaze's words. They knew he was serious when he talked about how important the Q part was going to be in how they went forward in life. It was a lot to take in. The weight of the message seemed to dampen the mood in the room. Soon, Blaze changed the topic and went on to describe some new developments from the future. You'll be happy to know that there have been improvements to how MAs, memory adjustments for the ghosting of selected memories, are conducted. I know that you were worried, Caleb. They have now started using a flashing pen with mind-penetrating light and sound waves. Actually, it was pretty funny. When the scientists came up with it, people couldn't believe it because it was so much like the tool used in the old Men in Black movie series. You know, that's probably where they got the idea. Blaze went on. While he was talking, Caleb, Grace and Asher noticed someone approaching Blaze from behind. It was Dr. Emma Daisuke. Leaning over Blaze's shoulder, she spoke directly to them. Well, greetings to you all. Caleb has told me. Dr. Daisuke stopped as she noticed the startled looks. I suppose I should call him Blaze when you folks are around. I may forget though, so be patient. So, I'll try again. Blaze has told me so much about you all. It's incredible to think about what an effect you are going to have on the world. Good for you. You should be proud. As she was talking, a cat jumped up and blocked the camera briefly before settling onto a chair next to Blaze. Oh look, our lab cat Suki has arrived to say hello. It was at that point that the trio thought there was some audio interference. They leaned forward as they heard a series of meows and then what they thought were the words hello and who are you. Blaze's lips were not moving though. I'll explain later, Zuki, Blaze had whispered, reaching over and dumping him off onto the floor. There were a few more meows and the garbled words not fair and don't be so bossy. Well, time to go for now. I'll be back this coming weekend. Don't forget to watch video A14, and good luck with the events of this week. Don't worry, everything will be fine. With that, Blaze's face disappeared, and the screen went back to Caleb's usual desktop. Grace turned to Caleb and Asher. Was I imagining things, or did that cat just speak? Probably just static on the transmission. Cats can't talk, Asher declared. I wonder, was all Caleb could manage? Blaze had once spoken to him about animals talking. I wonder, he repeated, barely audibly. The rest of the week was quite eventful. The earthquake happened, as predicted, and tragedy was averted across the region. With several days' warning, all schools and workplaces had been able to make suitable arrangements. Despite those that refused to believe the reported prediction, most schools and businesses made decisions with safety in mind and located people outside in stable areas away from buildings and other structures during the earthquake. In general, the whole population of the area followed suit. As a result, there had been no loss of life. The only injuries were to a group who wanted to show that it was only fake news and government overreach that was forcing them to alter their plans for the day. Despite the verified truth of the information, they chose to ignore all the scientific evidence. They had been protesting next to an unreinforced brick wall during the anticipated earthquake time, supposedly to show how sure they were that it was a hoax. Most of them sustained only scrapes and bruises, but a few also had broken bones. The brick wall, predictably, had collapsed on them during the quake. After watching video A14, they had much to think about. Caleb, Asher and Grace agreed to meet at the park on Saturday morning to debrief the week and talk about what was coming next.